Ave Maria in the Afternoon is a co-production of Ave Maria Radio and EWTN Radio and carried across the EWTN Global Catholic Radio Network. Welcome to Ave Maria in the Afternoon, examining the world through the lens of faith from the heart of the Church to help us navigate the culture. Here's Dr. Marcus Peter.
Good afternoon. Thank you very much for joining us on this hour of Ave Maria in the Afternoon. I'm Marcus Peter. We're going to start by sharing that we are joined by our friend Doug Keck of EWTN. In this first segment, he generously joins us every week, and this week we're going to talk about Pope Leo XIV's words and, frankly, warnings about new rising digital addictions. Some of this is not surprising. It's the reality of online pornography. And unfortunately, owing to the rise of artificial intelligence technology, pornography has become an even more ubiquitously available and curated form of itself that hitherto was almost impossible. And so this is yet another avenue that's going to facilitate a deeper sense of addiction if we don't caution ourselves. We go on from there and therefore Pope Leo XIV also cautions us on overt internet usage that results in compulsive gambling and betting. This is a topic that's been on my mind for a while now. I've been talking about it not only to raise awareness, but because just last year we saw a tremendous increase in market share when it came to online gambling here in the United States. The only country where there's some kind of a competition in terms of numbers is Australia, and whole lives are being ruined from age 18, frankly, first year of college, because of the online gambling phenomenon. Doug Keck and I are going to talk about this and assess this from a perspective of the Catholic Church and human anthropology. We go on from there to speak about artificial intelligence. Last week, I was blessed to be in Rome for the Builders AI conference that, to cut a long story short, is a conference that gathers experts from across the world to dialogue particular facets of artificial intelligence development. The report of this forum makes it to the various dicasteries in the Vatican for the sake of furthering the Catholic conversation with expert consultation on the artificial intelligence problem, because Pope Leo and the Church want to be at the forefront of this dialogue. I'm going to share some of the insights that I gained from the forum, but also some thoughts I have about where we as Catholics are. And then finally, we speak with my friend Dr. Matthew Bunson, because today we celebrate the feast day of Saint Leo the Great, the Pope who clarified the humanity and divinity of Christ. All this after the headlines.
Thank you, Marcus, and good afternoon, everyone. This is your Ave Maria Radio News for Monday, November 10th. It's the feast of Saint Leo the Great. And today's news is brought to you by the nonprofit Revive app. Feeling overwhelmed? Talk with a certified spiritual companion on the Revive app. That's REVIV, and then the number 3. It's another day of massive delays and flight cancellations, even as the government shutdown could be nearing its end. The number of flights have been cut by the FAA since Friday due to shutdown-related staffing issues. Hundreds of delays and cancellations are being reported again today at major airports nationwide. The Supreme Court will consider whether or not mail-in ballots received after Election Day can be counted. The case involves a Republican-led lawsuit over a Mississippi state law put in place during the COVID-19 pandemic. The law let mail-in ballots postmarked by Election Day to be received up to 5 days later. The Supreme Court is expected to hear arguments next year and rule by the summer ahead of midterm elections. Millions are bracing for an early blast of winter. Forecasters say a low-pressure area from Canada is ushering in colder temperatures and the potential for snow this week. Cities in the Midwest will see temperatures in the 20-degree range today, while places like Atlanta, Dallas, and Nashville could see temps in the 30s. And a new study suggests coffee may help protect against an irregular heartbeat. More than 10 million Americans live with a heart disorder known as AFib that could lead to heart failure and blood clots. The study shows just drinking 1 cup of coffee per day appeared to have a protective effect on AFib recurrence. For a long time, doctors have tried to understand the impact coffee has on AFib. From the Ave Maria Radio.net news desk, I'm Dan McGraw.
Good afternoon and welcome back. I'm Marcus Peter. In a special video message on Friday, Pope Leo XIV warned about excessive internet use and how it is fueling the continued rise of addictions, pornography addictions being one, but also now more than before, gambling addictions. Our friend Doug Keck of EWTN joins us. Doug, thank you for joining us. How are you?
Thanks for inviting me, as always.
Always a joy to reconnect with you. So, this problem, let's address the pornography problem, because it's been going on for a while, but it pays to have renewed conversation on the matter.
Well, obviously, I don't think anybody's telling tales out of school to know what the level of pornography that's available. I mean, you don't have to look for it; it'll find you just about anywhere. You go on X, you can see stuff that's borderline, or certainly if you pursue it, would find you in the midst of pornography. And certainly for somebody who worked on some early, channels like the Playboy Channel and Escapade and some others, as we've seen over the years, I saw the negative impact even of that kind of programming and how it impacts people. It is addictive, obviously. It's also something that destroys families, because it's a lot easier to relate to a computer that does whatever you want it to do, or AI now, as you were indicating earlier, than it is to have a relationship with somebody that has a level of give and take in it. And so it clearly becomes a much easier way for one to get what one believes they want, which is basically some sort of immediate gratification and satisfaction.
Since you brought it up again as well, for the listeners who don't know, artificial intelligence is making it so that you can custom make pornography now to suit every whim. Doug, can you please speak to just how more dangerous this is compared to what we've had in the past, which was already bad?
Well, we've already seen with certain things, people marrying their computer, or talking about marrying their computer, or marrying the the character that's been created in their computer, and those kinds of things, and people having a relationship clearly with, as you indicate, an AI character whose only design is to respond positively to everything you want to do. Well, it's great to have a situation where no matter what, kind of bizarre thing you're into, that the other person is totally cooperative, at least in the beginning. But at the same time, all of that stuff ultimately becomes boring. And the problem is that since it's boring, it always has to go to another level. And that's why things spiral down in relationships, and the pornography gets weirder and stranger. I mean, to have that same impact, it's no different than any other drug. You can take a mild form of a drug and get a kick out of it, but after a while, your body says, you want that same kick, you better give me some more. And that's how you find yourself getting that much more addicted. I don't think it's any different with gambling or pornography or any of these other things, or even just the idea of being involved in anything that gives you, quote unquote, a high, especially on the internet, playing video games. Well, I got to play them all the time now.
Right. And that's the problem. It's so easy to fall into that trap, that spiral of addiction. And could you please speak to also the evil of sports gambling? What has happened?
Yeah. Well, I just can't believe. I mean, I've seen it happen. I remember I worked on sports channels in the 1980s, in the mid 1980s, and I was doing programming sports panel in New York, and there was these kind of sports betting shows, and you could run them, and they would show up, but you couldn't really run them, directly around your events, and you couldn't bet online. But now you have this situation where virtually everything in sports is platformed on the betting odds. It's more important, actually, in most of the discussions than this team or that team, how good they are. So, and it's not only betting on the game; it's like betting on everything. There's not anything somebody's can't do that you can't place a bet on, and a bet on from your home. And not only is that takes away the reason you should be interested in the game, it also puts you in a position. I think recently I've heard some sports guys talking about how kind of negative and horrible threats and feedback, they get for, losing a game or throwing an interception. Well, how much do you want to bet? I hate to say that way. Those people have money riding on those games. It's not just fans who are, I'm really upset. I'm an Auburn fan. If anybody's got a right to be upset, I can be upset. But, I'm certainly not as upset as the people who are laying money down on the game. I can guarantee you that. So it takes away that, too, and it turns that into a problem. And then you've got players who, everybody's making so much money. And you saw recently, I guess, with a couple of the Cleveland Indian pitchers who were at least of being accused of some sort of, it wasn't even seemed like, I don't know if it's throwing a game. It's just throwing certain pitches at certain times or allowing some particular hitter or whatever. I'm not sure what the story is, but, these scandals happened in the past. We have to understand that people are fallen in the sense that we all have original sin. And when we're rewarded by bad behavior, we will be badly behaving. And the problem is society has decided through lotteries and all of these other things that gambling's a wonderful thing. Well, the reality is, and this is where the church has to step in, the gambling always negatively impacts the lowest people on the economic ladder. Lotteries, all gambling, all those kinds of things, as bad as they are for everybody, they really, really impact negatively the lower income because they're the people looking for the home run. They're the one looking for, I'm going to get this and I'm going to win $1 million and it's going to change my life.
And sometimes they invest practically everything they have into this terrible enterprise. And
right.
The way the laws are being written up now, these businesses are targeting people as young as 18 and spiraling them into debt. Can you speak to what that's doing to the culture?
Well, absolutely. And the fact that they say they're 18 doesn't mean they're not 15. I mean, how does anybody know what anybody is? Well, I really think, clearly, because there's no moral turpitude involved with any of this. The idea that there's anything wrong, I mean, they're old enough to serve in the Army and they're old enough to vote, so maybe not old enough to get a drink anymore, but, so they're old enough to gamble. And what's wrong with gambling anyway? And I think that's where, some of the things the Holy Father talks about with the church and things like that, I think one of them has to do with, you talk about forming a conscience, an informed conscience. Well, yeah, but what are we telling people? Where is the church on these things? Where are we dealing with this? And one of the things the Holy Father talked about is, building up people's, self-esteem. That doesn't work. The only way you improve people's self-esteem is for their own self-worth, is accomplishing things for themselves. Giving participation awards, we understand it doesn't work. It doesn't build up self-esteem. One time I heard a story, I don't know if it's true. Remember, Father Benedict Rochelle said, the highest self-esteem is young black men in prison. Now, that may not be true. I just remember the story. But it was the idea of trying to say that self-esteem doesn't necessarily mean that you're going to act in a positive way.
And that's precisely it, that self-esteem is not a guarantee of moral virtue and conduct in society.
Right, exactly. People who think, they have incredible self-esteem and they're horrible. They're narcissistic. They don't care about anybody else because they care about themselves because the only person who's really important is me. So, yes, young people have to have self-worth. They have to have hope. And the question is, how have we as Catholics, how has we as the church failed young people into thinking that their life has no meaning?
Right. So in light of all of this, these addictions, there are certain guardrails that we can put in place. In about 20 seconds, Doug, what's one key one that parents ought to do?
Well, I think clearly you've got to be careful about what your children are gaining access to, which is almost nearly impossible. There are things you can buy to kind of, tailor that or restrict it in some ways. And the other part is being a good example for your children, making sure you're not spending all your time on your iPhone, that when you're with them, that you're present with them, not that you're telling them not to do it, and then they see you doing the same thing.
Right. Well, those are some really sobering words of counsel. Thank you so much for your time, Doug.
Always a pleasure. Thanks, Marcus.
My guest has been Doug Keck of EWTN. We've been talking about Pope Leo XIV's recent statements about overt internet usage and the kind of addictions that it's facilitating, particularly pornography and online sports betting and gambling. Let's try to reverse the course of this in society. Stay tuned. I'm Marcus Peter.
Hello, I'm Marianne Kuharski with Pro-Life Across America. Did you know that a billboard can save a baby's life? When our billboards and radio ads are running, we receive hundreds of calls from those seeking pregnancy information and support. Every caller is connected to a local center offering free ultrasound and confidential counseling. Won't you join us in this life-saving effort? Donate today and help us do more. No gift is too small. That's prolifeacrossamerica.org.
Ave Maria in the Afternoon is underwritten by the following nonprofit organization: Real Estate for Life. Buying or selling your home or business property? Real Estate for Life can connect you with one of 1,400 pro-life real estate agents around the world. When Real Estate for Life receives a referral fee, they donate 70% to Ave Maria Radio and Human Life International. More information at realestateforlife.org or 877-LIFE-US1. That's realestateforlife.org.
He was a pope, a saint, and a doctor of the church.
Matthew Bunson and the Doctors of the Church.
Pope St. Gregory I the Great is one of only 4 popes honored as the Great. Among his many achievements was sending missionaries across Northern Europe, especially St. Augustine of Canterbury, who brought Christ to the people of England. In a pun, Pope Gregory called the English people angels. He died in 604.
For more about the Doctors of the Church, visit doctorsofthechurch.com.
This program brought to you in part by Ave Maria, Florida, a big kind of small town where golf carts take you everywhere and there's always something fun around the corner. Discover championship golf, resort-style amenities, and a town center full of shopping and dining. With Ave Maria University and Ave Maria Catholic Church at its heart, it's a community full of connection and charm. More than 25 model homes are available for viewing. More information can be found at avemaria.com. That's avemaria.com.
Good afternoon and welcome back. I'm Marcus Peter. I just got back from Rome after attending the Builders AI Conference. It's an annual gathering of technologists, ethicists, and theologians who spend a few days in polite argument over what the future will look like. Every year, the conference produces a report that goes straight to the Vatican's various dicasteries. The document outlines both the benefits and dangers of emerging artificial intelligence systems. The Vatican understands that this technology is already reshaping human life, and many Catholics, however, seem determined to act as if it is still science fiction. There are a few standard Catholic reactions to AI. The first is the economic pessimist's view. I've heard many versions of it, but it lands along the lines of, OpenAI is losing money, so the whole thing will collapse. The second is the spiritual escapist's response. It sounds like, let us ignore this and focus on prayer and just take care of ourselves and our families. The third reaction is not from Catholics, but from secular technologists. They dream of an upgraded humanity, immortal, transhuman, self-created. Each of these is an evasion of what God calls us to do. The first mistakes early losses for failure, the second mistakes holiness for withdrawal, and the third mistakes pride for enlightenment. At the conference, several developers explained that OpenAI's financial deficit was expected. From the very beginning, the company's investors planned to lose money for several years. It was written into the model. They understood that the cost of reaching a developmental threshold would be enormous. Facebook, Amazon, Google, they all went through the exact same phase. These companies bled capital while building infrastructure that would later redefine the digital age. Emerging technologies tend to behave this way. This pattern is predictable. Those who survive the early losses dominate the market for decades. The question is not whether AI companies are profitable today, but rather how much of human life will they control tomorrow. The ignore it and pray approach is worse. It gives the illusion of virtue but concedes the world to the secular. The modern church has a habit of retreating whenever a new cultural or technological frontier appears. Some Catholics seem convinced if they can keep their heads down, the danger will pass. It never does. The printing press multiplied heresy faster than the Inquisition could respond. The Enlightenment hollowed out technology while clerics debated Latin syntax. The digital revolution redefined identity while Catholic intellectuals wrote pastoral letters that unfortunately many people didn't read. Each time, the faithful claimed that they were protecting the church from contamination, but in truth, we ceded the world to whoever showed up. This kind of spiritual isolationism is a luxury that no missionary church can afford. When Catholics withdraw, others evangelize in their place. The architecture of the AI future already have their theology. It is a gospel of data and progress, preached by high priests like Sam Altman and Peter Thiel and their ilk. Their creed imagines human salvation through code and technology. Death is a technical malfunction that needs to be fixed, and they believe that they are building a new Eden, free of sin but also free of biology. What they're building looks more like something out of an apocalyptic Terminator movie. The church cannot compete with such hubris through sentimental optimism. She needs to respond with moral clarity and philosophical depth and hope. Artificial intelligence is already changing how humanity functions. It's going to alter what people mean when they say truth. Algorithms are now deciding what billions of users see, think, and desire. This is a form of mediation. AI stands between human beings and reality itself. It interprets the world before the human mind ever meets it. The question the church must face right now is whether the truth can survive if it is filtered through machines that have no souls. And it's a real danger, to be sure, because artificial intelligence doesn't hate humanity, it doesn't have a soul. It simply has no reason to care. It lacks intention. It has no moral compass, no desire for the good. And so its algorithms are being steered by people who don't share the same moral worldview we have. In that sense, the risk is that humanity will mistake correlation for wisdom. Because when that happens, moral philosophy is going to look like superstition, and theology will be the vestige of nostalgia. The response for Catholics cannot be retreat. It must be renewal. This is a tool, an instrument, like all others. There's tremendous hope in the frontier in terms of the church and the faith using this tool wisely, because the church has the intellectual resources to engage this challenge. The doctrine of man as bearers of the Imago Dei is a starting point. Intelligence alone doesn't make a person. Rationality is necessary, but incomplete by itself. We are body-soul composite beings capable of love because we are made by love, for love, to love. No machine will ever share that capacity. The distinction is fundamental. Without it, every discussion of personhood collapses into data analysis. If Catholics want to contribute meaningfully to this debate, then we must learn the language of it. So bishops, they need to seek out advisors who can speak the theology and the computer science of this reality. Priests must become fluent in moral reasoning about technology rather than just repeating platitudes about responsible innovation. And Catholic universities, some of them are leading the charge on this, should be teaching the metaphysics of information alongside Aquinas and Augustine. Because it's pointless to warn the world about AI but remain ignorant of how it functions. The idea that artificial intelligence could soon act as an intermediary for scripture and catechesis is not hypothetical. It is unfortunate. AI systems already are capable of summarizing theology, scripture, and in fact, I've heard of different Protestant branches that are using AI to generate whole sermons. Without careful oversight, they will soon start shaping the faith of those who use them. The potential for spiritual distortion is immense, don't get me wrong. A small shift in training data can turn orthodox teaching into heresy within seconds. But the church has the tools to defend doctrinal integrity in digital form. And this means oversight, verification, a theology of revelation that accounts for artificial intermediaries, and engagement of the technology. Some Catholics in Rome suggested that AI could become a tool of evangelization. I believe it can. We just need to utilize it wisely and learn how to do so. But it will also become the most efficient generator of false gospels ever created. And that frankly jars me. Machines can now imitate and create simulacras of human emotion well enough to persuade. They can create synthetic videos of the saints, digital apparitions, counterfeit miracles. They can compose catechisms customized to personal preference. A generation that's being raised on this kind of technology may soon struggle to understand that truth is objective and not subjective to what they put into the program. This is why the Church's teaching on natural law and theological anthropology matters. It grounds reality in reason illuminated by revelation. It reminds us the moral order doesn't evolve just because our inventions do. When technology accelerates without ethics, it outpaces the human conscience. We might be reaching that point again, because the tools we are building already exceed our collective wisdom to govern them wisely. And the only adequate response is a reassertion of truth, rooted in nature, confirmed by grace, and an active engagement of the technology. Catholics, we have to stop pretending that AI is a passing trend or an apocalyptic monster. It's an instrument. It's a mirror. It reflects what we value. If we train it on greed, it will magnify greed. If we feed it despair, it will return despair. Technology always reveals the soul of the civilization that uses it. What AI will reveal about ours is in your hands. So we, the faithful, have a choice now. We could watch the world rewrite human identity through code, or we could step into the debate, armed with reason and faith. The Church that once gave the world hospitals, universities, a scientific method, can now guide this new frontier, if she chooses to. The alternative is silence. Silence is never neutral. If the Church refuses to speak, others will, and their gospel will have no cross and no redemption. AI is not waiting for us to catch up. It's already shaping the imagination of the next generation. Our task is to ensure that when the world confuses human beings with machines, we will be there to respond to it. The question to us is whether the rest of the Church will take it seriously before the future arrives. Stay tuned. I'm Marcus Peter.
Ave Maria School of Law is the Roman Catholic law school in the United States. Consistently ranked in the Princeton Review as one of the best and most conservative law schools, as well as pre-law's most devout law school. Ave Maria School of Law provides a traditional legal education while emphasizing how the law intersects with the Catholic intellectual tradition and natural law philosophy. Ave Maria School of Law, unabashedly Catholic, consistently excellent. For more information, visit avemarialaw.edu.
St. Therese once told her sister Celine that when we trust ourselves and not God, our soul becomes barren and incapable of virtue. Her remedy? External works of charity. We all try to do it on our own sometimes without asking for God's help. At St. Paul Evangelization, we suggest sharing the gospel with someone who needs it. Check out streetevangelization.com to find a team near you where you can share the love of Jesus. If there isn't one in your area yet, perhaps God is calling you to start a team in your city. To learn more, visit streetevangelization.com.
Hi, I'm Angie. Did you know a billboard can save a baby's life? It's true. You can make a difference this holiday by helping us spread the pro-life message to reach those who are struggling with an unplanned pregnancy. Our billboards and ads feature our 800 hotline for help, which connects people to pro-life centers nationwide that can assist with free medical help, baby supplies, and more. Won't you join us in this season of giving? Please make a gift today. Visit prolifeacrossamerica.org. That's prolifeacrossamerica.org.
In her diary, St. Faustina wrote, "If only I had a spiritual director from the beginning, I would not have wasted so many of God's graces." If even the saints needed spiritual guidance, how much more do we? The nonprofit Revive app lets you meet virtually with certified spiritual companions, scheduling sessions at your convenience, helping you grow closer to Christ. Your first 2 sessions are free. Download the Revive app today. That's REVIV, and then the number 3.
Looking for a more peaceful family by Christmas? Join Dr. Greg and Lisa Popchak for a free live webinar, Have a More Peaceful Family by Christmas. It's Thursday, November 13th from 7:30 to 8:30 p.m. Eastern Time. Discover practical ways to reclaim Advent with purpose, prayer, and joy. Don't let Advent slip by in stress and distraction. Join the Popchaks and turn this season into a sacred success story. Register now at AveMariaRadio.net and make this Advent your most intentional yet.
It's time for Family Man with Dr. Gregory Popchak.
Household chores aren't just tasks that need to be done. They're a way for family members to learn to take care of each other. Families who create daily working together rituals don't see tasks like washing dishes or cleaning up the family room or folding laundry simply as things to do. By doing them together, these tasks become a way for family members to say, I love you, and you can count on me to show up, not just for the fun stuff, but all the other stuff too. Family working together rituals help families connect around caring for each other and their home. And that's one reason family rituals for working together are such an important part of Catholic family life. To discover more ways your family can celebrate the liturgy of domestic church life, check out the newest editions of Parenting with Grace and visit CatholicCounselors.com. I'm Dr. Greg Popchak, but you can call me Family Man.
To discover more ways faith can enrich your life, visit CatholicCounselors.com.
Strained or broken relationships are a given in most of our lives. Friends fall away, siblings drift apart, children sever ties with their parents, and despite our best efforts, these painful fissures are difficult to mend. Hi, I'm Dr. Ray. If you want to learn how to communicate better with the difficult people in your life and be a more easygoing, more forgiving person, check out my book, How to Get Along with Almost Everybody. Check it out, and all my other books on the store page at AveMariaRadio.net. That's AveMariaRadio.net.
Good afternoon and welcome back. I'm Marcus Peter. There's a certain oddness about how we think about our saviors here in the West. Some men shape the world through armies and treaties, others through sermons and letters. Leo the Great, whose feast day we celebrate today, and history rightly calls the Great, he didn't hold sword or scepter, but he did save Western civilization, not once, but twice. So once it was from theological collapse, and the other from barbaric ruin. Most students of history can name people like Attila the Hun, but few can name the man who faced him unarmed and successfully sent him away. When Leo became pope in 440 AD, the Western Roman Empire was already staggering toward extinction. Civic institutions were faltering, the army was scattered, Rome's prestige was waning under the weight of its own corruption. The imperial court was paralyzed by politics and exhaustion. In the middle of all that decay, Pope Leo stepped into the vacuum of authority. He became, in every sense, the last Roman statesman and the first pope of Christendom as we know it today. The 5th century was a real theological battlefield. The church had emerged from persecution only to be divided by heresy. The two most dangerous errors of Leo's day were Pelagianism and Nestorianism, but also the distortions of Eutyches. Pelagianism exalted human capacity to save itself without grace. I don't need God's assistance. I can just use the sheer strength of will to get to heaven. The latter two, especially Nestorius and Eutyches, they fractured Christ's person into incompatible pieces. For Nestorius, the personhood of Christ the man and Christ the God were separate things in the one union. Both represented an assault on the very core of the gospel. Salvation is divine, not human, and that the Redeemer is one person, fully God and fully man. Joining me to have a conversation about this is my friend, Dr. Matthew Bunson, Vice President and Editorial Director of EWTN News, and frankly, in my mind, one of the world's leading authorities on Leo the Great. Matthew, thank you for joining us. How are you?
Oh, it's great to be with you. I cannot take ownership of the claim that you just did, but I'm always happy to talk about Leo the Great. He is, in fairness, one of my favorite popes, in part because of just the accomplishments of his immensely important life.
So I was just opening up the vista into the historical issues of the time, Matthew. I wonder if you could share with us just how tenuous, both in terms of theology but also historically, was the milieu when Leo came into the forefront of authority.
Yeah, when we think of popes who had to deal with immensely complicated times, Leo the Great stands perhaps at the top of the list. We could also look at someone like Gregory the Great. But I think Leo in particular, precisely, you alluded to two things that are really important. The first is what was happening to the Roman Empire at the time of his pontificate. So he was pope from 440 until his death in 461. So this is a momentous 21-year period. We can talk more about the collapse of the Western Roman Empire and the great threats to the Western Roman Empire, even from the Eastern Roman Empire. But then, internally, within the church. We have, in this century, in the 5th century, a continuation of what was happening also in the 4th century, which was the great Christological controversies as the church, having emerged from the terrible centuries of persecution, grappled with heresies that really challenged and questioned who Christ is. And it centered in so many ways with the Arians in the 4th century. Was Christ truly the Son of God? Is Christ truly the second person of the Trinity as we understand him? Was he created at some point? But then as those were settled, even more questions emerged in terms of the Christology, trying to understand Christ's natures, divine and human. Is he a person? And if so, what does that mean? And that led to further heresies in the 5th century, I think, especially of Nestorianism. But the one that Leo really grappled with, which was Monophysitism, that called into question, does Christ have one true divine nature that's intended to absorb his human nature? So you can imagine the complexity of the theological arguments, but how fiercely they had to be fought, because if we waver to any of these extremes, we lose a proper understanding of who Christ is, and therefore we can lose sight of Christianity entirely.
And that's precisely what Leo was up against during his time, that these heresies are not just trivial intellectual matters, but they get to the heart of simply what Christ we worship.
That's exactly right. And to understand that this is a period in which precise terms were also coming into use. We had a profound understanding of who Christ is. At the same time, we're also trying to elucidate, to understand more fully Christ's magnificent composition. And I go back to that question, does he have two natures? How is he divine and human? How is he united in the one person that we call Jesus Christ? And if there is that union of the human and the divine, how is that balanced? And how do we approach this question as Leo would say, with neither confusion nor division? And all of that was playing out at the very time when different heretics, different heresies had emerged with their own interpretations. And here we have the monumental work of the great fathers of the church who were grappling with these questions, at the same time trying to refute the heresies, and even then coming up with the proper vocabulary for expressing this. And I think that's one of the things when we talk about what we call the hypostatic union. What do we mean by that? I mean, the union of Christ's human nature and divine nature in one hypostasis, or individual personhood. Now, imagine the ramifications of that as we came to a deeper understanding of Christ's personhood, that this is a person. But that also tells us then and points us toward the even greater beauty and mystery of the Holy Trinity, because Christ is a person in that Trinity with God and the Holy Spirit. All of that playing out in the dramas of these great ecumenical councils. And here we have Leo being elected Pope right at the time when these great fights were taking place of the Nestorians, who had their own vision of Christ's human and divine nature, but then especially, as I was saying, what the Council of Chalcedon had to grapple with, which was this heresy that was proposing essentially that Christ's human nature was absorbed. One of the phrases that was being used by one of the leaders of this movement, Eutyches, that Christ's human nature was dissolved into his divinity as a drop of honey would dissolve into the waters of the ocean. So it's an over-exaggeration of Christ's divinity, but in some ways that even played out in the great theological schools of the time. In particular, you have a place like Antioch, which stressed more Christ's humanity, and the Alexandrian school that stressed Christ's divinity. So all of this playing out. And here was Leo providing what became simply known as the tome, that provided perfect clarity for what the church believed.
is tome to Flavian. This was, in some ways, and please pardon the gangster rap euphemism here, but this would be one of history's great diss tracks, so to speak. And if you could comment on just how much, because I think a lot of people haven't read the tome, but the fact is we owe a great deal to even the way we practice Christianity today, to Leo's defense of Christ's hypostatic union.
Yeah, that's absolutely right. So he writes this tome. It's essentially a letter, and that this be read. And it came, and if we think we have problems today, we don't appreciate the great threats that the church had faced in previous centuries. I think in particular the Arian heresy, but this too was one. And so when we come back, we can talk more about the Robber Synod and the Council of Nicaea.
Mm-hmm. My guest is Dr. Matthew Bunson, Vice President and Editorial Director of EWTN News, and simply a wealth of information in general. And we're talking about Pope Leo the Great, Pope Leo I, and the immense debt that the West and the Church today owes to him. Stay tuned. I'm Marcus Peter.
Do you own popular index mutual funds or ETFs? If so, you're automatically own shares of companies that conflict with your moral beliefs. Ave Maria mutual funds are managed to conform to pro-life and pro-family values. Long-term investors can invest in the no-load Ave Maria mutual funds. The experienced professional portfolio managers make decisions based on investment fundamentals and pro-life values. You can learn more about Ave Maria mutual funds today at 866 Ave Maria or visit AveMariaFunds.com.
You like pizza? Me too. And for that, we can thank our friend Tom Monahan. First, he starts with $900 and opens one pizza shop. Then it's worldwide, thousands of shops. But all this was just a warm-up for his greatest achievement yet. He built a university.
God inspired Tom to build up generations of men and women who have a hunger to reach the world for Christ. This place is Ave Maria University.
Visit avemaria.edu to see what's next.
Maybe you've been hearing a lot about the need to make a spiritual communion while participating from home in a live-streamed or broadcast Mass. There's more to it than reciting the act of spiritual communion. We should begin by having sincere repentance for our sins and affirming our belief that Christ's death redeemed us. Next, we call to mind the spiritual gifts found in Christ's sacrifice and thank God earnestly for them. Now we are disposed to pray the traditional prayer of spiritual communion. Jesus, I embrace you and unite myself wholly to you.
When the need for senior care arises, home is where the heart is. Visiting Angels provides home care for mom or dad up to 24 hours per day, including personal care, meals, and light housework. You may select your professional caregiver with Visiting Angels. More information at visitingangels.com or at 877-374-LIVE. That's 877-374-LIVE. Visiting Angels, America's choice in senior home care.
Father Benedict Rochelle.
I must tell you that from what I observe from very young people, all of these blasphemers, all of these mockers are in for a tough time. Because the devil bites his own tail. And I find among young people a growing reverence and longing for God. I find a decline in the cynicism and skepticism around, because it had to destroy itself. No one can live on being an enemy of God. It's too crazy. It's too absurd. It's too dark. It's too bleak. God is beautiful. God is holy. Why in the world mock God?
The people you know and trust are on EWTN.
Is there a universal call to prayer? The Catholic Catechism tells us man is in search of God. God, in the act of creation, called every being into existence from nothingness. Even after man sinned and lost his likeness to God, he remained an image of his Creator and never lost his desire for the one who called him into existence. All religions attest to man's essential search for God. The Catechism points out, however, that God calls us first to that mysterious encounter, prayer. God always initiates. Man's first step in the process is to respond. Prayer is a reciprocal call. Throughout the whole history of salvation, the covenant drama unfolds. The revelation of prayer in the Old Testament comes between the fall and the restoration of man. This is Peggy Stanton, and this has been the Order of Malta's Minute with the Catechism.
Good afternoon and welcome back. I'm Marcus Peter, talking with Dr. Matthew Bunson, Vice President and Editorial Director of EWTN News. Matthew, we were cut off at the break, but you were talking about the significant impact that Leo's, especially his Tome de Flavian, had on the debt that the West owes to him now, and as well as the Church.
Yeah, exactly. Well, he was very much aware of his significance, the role he played as Bishop of Rome, and that he needed to weigh in on what was a great controversy then roiling much of the Eastern Roman Empire over the Nestorian controversy, which again was calling into question Christ's human and divine natures, and submitted this as something that he was addressed as a letter to Archbishop Flavian of Constantinople, who was himself deeply maligned and ultimately condemned by the Nestorians. And then at the Second Council of Ephesus, it was delivered to them in 449 with the hopes that this would actually help solve the problem. But the council, in fact, did not read the letter, nor did it pay any really attention to the unhappiness of Leo's representatives. But ultimately deposed Flavian and Eusebius of Dorylaeum, two major figures of the time who appealed to Rome, which ultimately found absolute vindication at the Council of Chalcedon in 451 that dealt with this controversy by another heretic by the name of Eutyches. And the Second Council of Ephesus, it was sort of hijacked by those who were in power at the time in advancing these heretical ideas. It shouldn't be confused with the other Council of Ephesus in 431. But this is simply termed the Latrocinium, or the robber synod by Pope Leo himself. And so this vindication that took place at Chalcedon included the full reading of this tome that speaks with such remarkable clarity of Christ's divine and human natures coming together in this hypostatic union, and that we call the hypostatic union that is this in the personhood of Jesus Christ. And there's a famous phrase that the council itself, when they heard this and affirmed all of the true teachings of Christ's two natures, human and divine, that the council fathers themselves proclaimed, this is the faith of the fathers. This is the faith of the apostles. Peter has spoken through Leo. It's one of the great phrases and lines in church history, and cemented forever after Leo's place as one of the greatest articulators, but also not just of who Christ truly is, but also the role that the popes must play in the life of the church.
Because of this, it's so clear that when you look at the writings of the Catechism today and Aquinas, and I'm only mentioning these two, we owe a tremendous debt to the crystalline capacity of Leo's teaching. That's one thing. But the second thing was this man was a polymath. He was also a brilliant statesman.
He was. And I think that's one of the things that whenever we talk about Leo, there are three things that I always think of. The first is what we were just talking about, that how the great tome that he wrote. Another is, and here we are on the cusp of entering Advent, where his magnificent homilies and his teachings, his very famous Nativitate Domini, Christmas Day sermon, where he coined that great phrase, Christian, remember your dignity. So that's, in terms of teaching people, that's the second thing. But the third is his crucial role at a time when the Roman Empire in the West was literally collapsing around what was left of imperial civilization. You had the emergence of Constantinople and the Eastern Roman Empire as this bulwark, but the West itself was being subjected to severe invasion. You know, the sack of Rome around 410 by the Goths. But then, in 451, you had Attila the Hun, who invaded the West. He was essentially bribed to bypass Constantinople and just stormed into what is now Western Europe. And he was checked at the Battle of Chalons in 451 and then turned south, menacing Rome. Now, it's hard to imagine fully today that the terror that Attila and his horde of Huns brought to the Western Empire. He was called the Flagellum Dei, the scourge of God, and they laid waste the whole parts of Western Europe, what we would think of as Western Europe, and was then threatening Rome. But there's only one person at that point left with any sense of authority in the Italian peninsula, and that was Pope Leo. And so he rode out to meet with Attila the Hun. And we don't know exactly what happened, what he said to him. But the two met. And whatever that conversation was, Attila the Hun turned away from Rome. So Leo the Great literally saved Rome. And we don't know how much damage might have happened had Attila the Hun actually pushed on. But it's a testament, too, to the fact that Attila the Hun died soon after. And what some had assumed would be this long-lasting empire, the Huns, disintegrated almost immediately with his death. But there were still other problems, because you had just a few years after that, just 3 years later, that the Vandals sacked Rome. But they did so in a way that was much more systematic and far less destructive. It's obviously a terrible thing that Rome was sacked by the Vandal king Gaiseric. But Leo himself wielded such influence that the Vandals themselves were fairly respectful. So in other words, Pope Leo and his priests went out, met Gaiseric, and asked him, please do not destroy the city. And the Vandals then proceeded to plunder the city. But nevertheless, they did not lay waste to it. In other words, the basilicas of St. Peter, St. Paul, of St. John, in which so much of the Roman population was hiding, those were spared. And it is very famous that Gaiseric wanted as much gold as they could carry and all of the pepper in the city, because that was considered something of a great treasure, almost worth as much as gold, to season their food.
I'm going to ask you to speak to something of a personal opinion. And I know neither you nor I like doing that, but you know the story of when Attila approached Leo and the vision that he saw. I want to know what you thought of it.
I think clearly Leo's spiritual influence was so immense that Attila recognized it immediately. And I think that was crucial to his understanding. There does not seem to have been bribery involved, because Leo had very little to offer at that point to Attila the Hun. I think his sheer spiritual power and whatever vision Attila saw at that moment was enough to convince him. So the rest, we leave to legend. There's this beautiful monument in St. Peter's Basilica of the two meeting. And then, of course, there's a famous painting by Raphael of the meeting between Leo the Great and Attila. And that's supposedly where Leo was at his side. He had St. Peter and St. Paul saving Rome. So I will leave to speculation as to what Attila may have seen or what Leo was able to tell him. But regardless, the importance of Leo for that, for the tome, for his teachings, it is why he is counted as one of what I think we now would consider the four great popes. along with Gregory the Great, Nicholas the Great, and then, of course, John Paul the Great.
As we talk about all these heritages, is it too much for me to say that if Leo wasn't as great as he was, we might not have the heritage of Gregory, of Innocent, of John Paul?
Well, I think he was the Pope who was needed at that precise moment. He followed, I think it was Sixtus III, who recognized in him immense talent. He was unanimously elected. The way that popes were elected at the time, of course, was largely through popular vote. And Sixtus III understood that Leo had to be his successor. And I think that's one of the great helps that we have when we can look back in the history of the Church and see that popes were chosen, that popes emerged exactly at the time when the Church and the world needed them the most. And I think if we look for a parallel, I think Gregory the Great would be the next one to consider, because he faced similar challenges that Leo did, certainly in terms of the collapse of what was left of imperial civilization. We'd had over 100 years of suffering after the final fall of the Roman Empire, of Rome itself. We had the shifting of the imperial city north. But I think Leo himself, if you say something that's really important, I think he really helps to establish temporally for the popes, but also spiritually, a reinvigoration of the papacy at precisely the time when it was needed most. And as the Roman Empire in the West died, and what was the vestiges of Roman imperial civilization, the long-haired kings, the barbarians, Christianity was poised for the future, and Gregory the Great was able to pick that up.
Matthew, this was truly stupendous, and he's a pope that I love dearly, so thank you for making the time. My guest has been Dr. Matthew Bunson, Vice President and Editorial Director of EWTN News. We owe so much to the heritage of Leo the Great. Let's seek his intercession today. I'm Marcus Peter.